think about what is exciting about life, and where is hope. And I think this whole thing of how can we create a sustainable future should not be just worrying about the situation that we're in, but being hopeful and excited about the future and where technology can bring us. Hello, my name is Soerensen. I'm speaking today to Renae about the future of luxury hospitality. How are you? Good evening to you now. It's what time is it with you guys? Yeah.
Are you in London?
No, I'm in France.
Oh, they're still there.
Yeah, I'm still in the southwest of France.
Where exactly are you?
We're close to the Cap Ferret. We're opposite of it in Arcachon, which is maybe 45 minutes away from Bordeaux. So we're quite central and yet tucked away.
Oh, how perfect at this time.
Oh, it's lovely. And, you know, Europe gets a little colder these days, but down here we still have 20, you know, I mean, now it's maybe 22 and it's going to be 26 today. And the sun is shining. So yeah, it's a beautiful time of year. It becomes even lovelier here because, you know, the water is still warm from the summer. You know, the masses have left and the weather is still beautiful.
Were there a lot of tourists there this season?
There are. I mean, we spoke to some of the locals and they said there were less people than they thought they would be, which caught me by surprise a little because I thought that in the year sort of, you know, towards the end of this pandemic, people would stay in the country. I think the south of France, sort of the south east of France, where the Mediterranean Sea is, I think that's where they were really very busy this summer. Whereas here on the southwest at the Atlantic, it was busy, but it wasn't as busy as they had seen in years prior.
I know you're a devout vegan. So what restaurants are you missing whilst you're in the south of France?
I like a place called ABCV, which is in New York, I think on East 18th Street. It's a vegan vegetarian restaurant, which I always sort of radiate around when I'm in New York. I like that place a lot.
There's a lot of choices for vegans in New York too.
Oh, more and more. And it was so inspiring to see 11 Madison Park and Daniel Hum go all plant-based after their, you know, closure and with the reopening. And I hear he has a waiting list of like, you know, month. Yeah, I think he's really recognizing the change and making the right decisions. I mean, I can only, you know, tip my hat to him. It's incredible what he's done.
So many people everywhere are going vegan. Why is that, do you think?
Because otherwise we can't live on this planet for much longer. You know, yes. And I think that there is more and more evidence that a plant-based diet is the best diet for human beings on a health perspective. But, you know, this planet is suffering because of the way we use it. And it's just the logical thing to live sustainable on a planet which we inhabit. You know, it's like, I mean, yes, Elon might put us on Mars, but, you know, we can't all go.
Don't you think one of the great things to come out of the pandemic is that we have seen a return to nature in some ways? I mean, we've seen deer walking into London, for example. We talked to someone in Bali yesterday who talked about turtles coming back to the clear waters there.
Yeah, but will they stay there? I mean, you know, it wasn't really a conscious, intelligent decision of the human race to let deers back into London. I think it was just forced by a pandemic.
You know, it dovetails into, you know, what do you think the future is of luxury travel?
You know, the interesting bit is there was a lot of conversations around what's the new normal, you know, where's luxury travel going to go, what's going to happen. And I think we as humans, our need, the luxury industry will go more and more into these meaningful, more relevant connections. And then people will look out for that. And at the same time, we have this trend right now, which is not a need, it's a trend that people just want to get away from everybody. It's not here to stay. I don't think so. And it's not affordable. No, I mean, I'm not going to start traveling on a private jet, you know, and so do many others because you just can't.
Do you think that air flights will increase dramatically in price? I'm talking about commercial airlines now.
You know, the funny thing with this is that your first reaction as somebody who's worried about the climate would be, yes, they should, and less people should be flying. But then you obviously have the other side of the coin to say, is this going to become a privilege of the rich and wealthy? And if you don't have the means to buy air travel, you're sort of stuck with sticking around your local areas, which is not right. I think like in many ways, and in life often, it's not like white and black. It's more to say, how can we sustainably grow, because it will grow, air travel, and how can we encourage people to travel, but not to travel, excessively or extensively, or take a cheap flight to Buenos Aires for the weekend if you live in Barcelona. The thing is that travel itself, you see that with the revolution of electric cars right now, we will see electric, flying and other technologies that we don't think of right now. And I think people will be able to get from A to B sustainably, and not through fossil fuels. So I think that's the way we should look at it.
And how do you see your future? Where are you going to work next, do you think, in terms of location? Do you want to stay in Europe? How do you feel?
Well, we have a little son, so we're quite flexible when it comes to our family at the moment to still move around a little bit. At the same time, I guess the circle of life means if you're having children, your parents are getting older, and they're in Germany, and I don't want to, be the other end of the world and see them more. So will I be a general manager in a high-powered city hotel traveling the world every month? I don't know. I don't think that is my next step. Do I want to work within hospitality? Do I want to be part of something that's relevant? Yes.
What will be the next generation of luxury?
The question is, what is this new luxury, and what will people perceive as luxury? And I feel the industry is still heavily promoting product and heavily promoting tangible assets, whereas what the edge will be in the new luxury is how well do we educate and engage the teams that will be the ones responsible for guest experiences. Hospitality invests a fraction of their revenues into training, and when we do, we often invest it into the wrong type of training. Why? Because we're all benchmarking too much. I mean, if you think of the concept of external organizations going into a hotel and giving them their standards to follow, I mean, if you just take a step back, that is just crazy. If we really want to compete for the luxury traveler, and also for the new luxury traveler that is in her early 20s right now, these young great minds will look for very different things when it comes to what a hotel does to them. And this
Can you give us an example? Because you're talking a lot about no longer promoting assets in the traditional way that we've seen with luxury hotels, which might be the heritage building, the incredible interiors, the spa. Give us a tangible example of a way that in the future a 5-star hotel might promote the kind of experiences you're talking about.
You need to be very sure about why you do things. And I think hotels are still speaking too much about what they do and how they do it, and not why they do it. Being and engaging with companies that do good, and you engaging with them, you're doing good because of that. That's something that the hospitality space can still grow so much in. That, the reason why people stay at a hotel is not only because the beds are great, but because of where they stand on many different subjects.
How has having your son Arthur impacted your view of luxury travel?
Having children, or having a child, really puts things in perspective and changes, and opens another chapter of life. And life is, many chapters, and I think it's important to recognize which chapter you're in, and embrace that and be happy with it. And as much as my wife and I, we've traveled the world, and I've been all over the place over the last 15 years. Would I want to do that having a young child? No. What is it that I can give to a child while I'm still there, and how much time can I spend with that child? And there's a saying from educators that they always say, we're not raising children, we're raising adults. And I like that, because we're really raising an adult here. Like we want this kid to become a responsible human being. And is your inheritance, you know, a great career, money and houses, or is your inheritance spending more time with him while you're still there? You know, like, I mean, and there is a healthy medium. You have, you know, professional and private ambitions, and you know, you want to have a sense of self-fulfillment, and I'm a very eager and motivated and person, and I like that element. And at the same time, I think it's important to find a good balance, and I think it is enriching the way you're leading rather than getting in the way of it, because having children should be something that is inclusive and positive in career development and not a hindrance. And I think we need to recognize that and look at ways of how I can contribute to whatever I want to contribute to, but not have, you know, having a family life being in competition to that, but potentially complementing that.
And tell me, the last time we caught up, you had just seen Eckhart Tolle speak in person in London.
Yeah.
I know that spirituality, we have a lot in common in that area. We're both very interested in it. How much has, you know, his teachings and more influenced you as a general manager and the way that you train your staff?
Oh, such an interesting question. I think we could do a podcast, you know, just on that topic.
I think we could. Maybe we will, you know, at some stage.
Yes. You know, I always feel that life's and the inspiration that life brings is like a bookshelf. And I feel I've never been following one opinion or one person and sort of trying to translate everything they say into what I do. You can pick and choose, like in a bookshelf, of like what elements radiate with you, and what do you think is relevant and what makes sense. And it's almost that you're building bridges from one to the other and to the other. And with Eckhart Tolle, I mean, this whole element of, what is he saying, the power of now, and how people should worry about the present and what they can really influence in the present, and that, you know, that you control your mind, and that the mind doesn't control you, and that you have to be very conscious around that.
I have to ask you, we have to take it back to the hotels. You were one of the youngest general managers in London at the Beaumont Hotel. How did you end up in that position?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know myself, really. And I wouldn't have, because I didn't really apply for that job. When I was in New York, and I was working at the Plaza Hotel as a concierge, I had a very inspiring head concierge. His name was Raphael Palais, or he still is Raphael Palais. And Raphael was a concierge, but he was also a poet, and he was a writer, and he was a painter. And he was a concierge, but that was maybe 5% of who he is as a person. But that made him one of the most inspiring people that I was around, because he was just embracing life on a scale that I'd never seen before. And he had an interview once with Richard Quest. And at the very end, Richard said to him, if you give one advice to people in hospitality, what would this be? And he said, cultivate your friendships. And that always stuck with me, and it was something that was very innate to me. And the Beaumont, in many ways, was because of a friendship and because of a relationship at work. Because at the Connaught, where I worked before I went to Paris, I worked with one of my colleagues at the time, who was the reception manager, and he had moved to the Beaumont. And when Jeremy King and Chris Corbin were looking for a general manager for the Beaumont, he said at one point to Jeremy King, you might want to get in contact with Yannis and interview him, because I think that he would be the right general manager for the hotel. I would have not applied for this position. They would have not contacted me for that position, because I wasn't even a hotel manager yet. But yet it took, you know, a recommendation from somebody and a relationship between that person and Jeremy, and then the trust that Jeremy had in, you know, doing what's right, but not doing what's always been done. He just took a chance and invited me for an interview.
And being such a young person in such a fantastic job, did you meet some resistance from other people in hospitality?
No. You know, I didn't. I mean, yes, sometimes people would say, oh, you're very young to be a GM, but it wasn't never negative. And then I always look 5 years younger. I guess, though 10 years than I am. And, it's a little less now, but like 5 years ago, I looked like I was in my beginning of my 20s. So I think it was even worse.
And just briefly tell us about your experience at the Four Seasons in Paris. I mean, that's one of the world's greatest hotels, the Georges V.
Yes. So the Georges V, again, when I left Berlin, I was 23. I didn't speak French, but I had in my head that I wanted to go to Paris. So my head concierge in Berlin at the time said that, he first tried to convince me not to go because I think he wanted me to stick around at the Adlon. He contacted Roderick Levejac, who was the head concierge at the Four Seasons. So I at least had an interview at the Four Seasons, but I also interviewed at all the other hotels in Paris and all the 5-star properties. And they all said to me, Yannis, we find this admirable what you do, but you don't speak French. This doesn't work. You can't work here when you don't speak French.
Fair enough.
So fair enough. Unless if you speak to Leah Marshall, who was the hotel
manager. I know her well.
Yes, at the Four Seasons at the time. And that was one of my last interviews. And I remember sitting in her office and I said to Leah, Leah, I just want to be quite open. I don't speak French. She looks at me and she says, well, you're here to learn it, are you? And I'm like, yeah, that's a way of looking at it. And for her, it wasn't a hindrance. And I think in many ways that had to do also with what Four Seasons stands for, and Didier Le Calvez at the time, who was running the hotel. And they just had a different spirit and a different openness and a different eagerness to, I guess, say what is this person bringing to the occasion rather than what is he not bringing to the occasion. So they gave me a chance and I learned French eventually. Yes. And
it's a theme in your life.
It is a theme. Yeah. I mean, obviously you have to work very hard for it. And I think I walked through, 6-7 pairs of shoes to get to know Paris as a concierge, because the other hindrance was that being a concierge in a city that you don't know is another challenge apart from not speaking the language. But there's a lot of work that you have to do to almost redeem the trust that people have in you. But I was always motivated to do that. And yeah, it becomes a positive circle of events, because then the next thing you do, you refer to what you've done before and the people that have trusted you and it worked out, they'll recommend you. And yeah,
Leah, I'm so glad Leah gave you that chance. She's one of my favorite French women. And I've had several glasses of champagne over the many years with her. She's just wonderful. And I think she might come on the podcast at the end of the year because Le Bristol's just been renovated. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, she's an inspiration to me and so many others, and she's just a fabulous hotelier and a great person, and I have a big sense of gratitude towards her and learned so much from Leah.
She's fabulous. And tell us, have you got any celebrity stories that you can share with us, perhaps from a few years ago?
No.
Oh.
No. What? Yeah. I had once a celebrity, which I won't name, who at the Plaza in New York. So the Plaza's entrance is maybe 20, 30 meters away from the curb. There's the big stairs and then there's another 50 meters of like pedestrian
I've been
sidewalk.
there. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And that person wouldn't want to leave the car unless there is candles lined up left and right as sort of a red carpet lined with candles. And the person wouldn't leave the car until we had these candles going, but is New York. I mean, it's always a little windy. There's always a little, rain. So it took whatever 10, 15 bellboys to constantly lit these candles before this person would come out. And eventually the person came out and, most of the candles were burning. And
was it a woman or a man? Just give us a vision. Was it a woman or a man?
It was a woman. It's a funny thing about celebrities, because like every human being, they're just human beings, it's like, and some of them are really nice and some of them are not, like it doesn't change just because you're famous. That was quite special.
Is there anyone else you've been starstruck by?
The Formula One drivers are really small, because they have to be, yes, but you don't see that when you see them on camera. And when you meet them, you're like, oh, like they're fit, they're well trained and they're super nice and impressive, but they're small. So like that's a little also starstruck. It's like, oh, I picture that differently.
Any crazy requests when you're a concierge for some of these famous people?
Yeah, I mean, we changed the color of cars overnight in garages, and we once commissioned a rose to be sculptured out of a solid block of ice for a client for Valentine's Day in New York, because he didn't want to buy her, just roses, but we had somebody sculpture this 2.5-meter high rose out of crystal ice, and it was sort of mounted and installed in that suite, and cost a fortune, and obviously it didn't last very long because it was ice.
How much was it? How much was that?
Oh, tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, it's just, and the fun thing in New York, Renae, is that everything is always so available. I mean, it's like you get a request like that and you think this can't possibly be happening. And 4 hours later, you have some guy sculpturing that rose in the suite, or somebody comes to the desk on a Sunday morning at 5:30 and wants Cuban breakfast. And you think there can't possibly be a place that serves Cuban breakfast. And there's like 6 in walking distance of the Plaza, like New York taught me a big lesson, which is just because you don't know doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Like the craziest things, just be curious and try to find them.
Yeah, how fantastic. And when you travel, where do you like to travel? And is it in luxury or?
Yeah, I mean, define luxury.
Fair point. Good question.
I like to travel. I'm obviously, a big fan of travel, and I like to go to places that make me feel good. So I like to go to a place called Arles in the south of France.
I've been there.
There's a photo exhibition, the Rencontre des Arles, every year, and we stay at a place called the Hotel Particulier, which is a small hotel. They have, I think, 10 rooms. They don't even have a restaurant, but it's one of the most magical places that I've stayed in. They have this beautiful little courtyard and swimming pool, and the whole sort of design and decor of the hotel is just beautiful. I mean, it's faultless when it comes to aesthetics, but it's not like screaming for attention. So yeah, I really like that.
It's a really gorgeous town with a lot of art in it, Al. It's always got exhibitions, and it's just incredible. Big enough, and it's just small enough, and the nightlife's quite vibrant too for a small town.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the summer, or when they have the Rencontre des Arles, it's really the center of the universe for some time, and it's fabulous. Yeah, we love going there. But yeah, I mean, we don't really go back to the same places. We do like to go different places and discover different parts of the world if we can. And now having a young boy, obviously, we'll look at travel differently, and where we find the best mix for all of us to have a great time. So, but look, we've been in the south of France here for the last 2.5 months, so I feel I'm on a holiday these days.
Well, look, I could talk to you all night, Yannis. You have so many wonderful and interesting things to say, but I have to ask you my final question, which I ask everyone, and that is, where to from here for you?
Renae, it's funny because there is this logical next step for me, and I'm really humbled to have had such great offers over the last couple of months.
I'm sure.
I need to figure out what the next 15 years are, because now I would go, if you think like you go to another hotel, then you go to another hotel, then you go to another hotel, and combining that with family, there's some people who really manage well to do it. There's a lot of people who don't. And I think it's about the positioning right now. It's not like, my midlife crisis is not about buying a new car and having a young girlfriend. It's about figuring out of what this next phase in life looks like for me. And I think we're gonna, take our shoes off and walk down the road, because the beach is literally 60 meters from here. And Arthur started walking 4 days ago, so he's utterly excited to walk around, and he loves the beach and eating sand. And as long as we're here, we'll make the most out of that. So, and the sun is shining, so we're off to the beach.
Enjoy. Have a fantastic day in France.
Thanks so much, Renae.
Thank you for your time.
And you. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for regular travel updates. You can also hear our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.